Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. The presidency has responded to a recent New York Times report criticizing the Nigerian economy as facing the worst trajectory in a generation. Special advisor to the president on information and strategy, Bola Tinubu, argued that the report reflected a biased and derogatory perspective typical of foreign media's coverage of African stories.
Onanuga noted that the report unfairly blamed the new administration for the inflationary challenges of the past year without acknowledging positive aspects of the economy and ongoing ameliorative policies. He said that Tinubu did not create the current economic problems but inherited them, describing the economy as bleeding and in urgent need of intervention to avoid a crisis similar to those in Zimbabwe and Venezuela. That is our conversation this morning.
And joining us this morning is Segun Sopitan, who, of course, will be letting us know if the New York Times was talking rubbish or
nonsense, or it was, the presidency that is, out of order.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us.
How derogatory was the New York Times report on Nigeria's economy?
Well, I mean, anything that anybody says, whether it's the New York Times or you, that does not sing Hosanna, Hallelujah, and Kumbaya to the actions of politicians, it's derogatory. And I think that's what we're seeing. It's the typical response system of most government officials. And it didn't start with these guys. And if Nigerians don't do something about it, won't end with them. There's nothing derogatory about what the New York Times has said. They've simply told us what the truth is. And it's quite, I don't even know whether to say it's disturbing anymore, because this is the trend, How can Mr. Onanuga claim that this is derogatory? How can he not know that these are just simple truths? The reality that Nigerians are facing today is what the New York Times chronicled. Yeah. So there's nothing derogatory about it, and the data is out there. The economic data, the macroeconomic data, the microeconomic data. It's all out there, including the most recent inflation report. The earlier our government officials learned to deal with public issues with candor, the faster they will be able to galvanize the support of the citizens. I think one of the most annoying things for most Nigerians is the fact that politicians just go on as if they live in a different universe, like they live in a different reality. It makes people angry, and that anger can blow over.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that was the premise on which we started today's show, talking about the disconnect between politicians and Nigerians. I mean, if you read the article, so many heart-wrenching is the easiest way I can put it, reports of people's real-life experiences, right, being detailed in that report. Mm-hmm. Would you say that from the way the government is carrying on, that it's as a result of the fact that they're totally disconnected, they're not aware, very much because they're not in the shoes of the people? Or would you say it's because they don't care at all, that you understand, but they just do not care?
Yeah, I think they know. Somewhere, because they used to live, they're one of us. Let's be, real about it. Majority of them got their lives transformed when they got political appointments or political, they were elected into office. Before that, they lived amongst us, in the same estates that we all live in, on the same streets that we live in. They know what people are going through based on their own previous experience. But the moment they get into government, they move into a bubble. And they're shielded from those realities. And some of them, because of their personal hubris, tend to forget. I don't know if it's deliberate, amnesia, but they tend to forget, and that's why you find them speaking with such arrogance and all of that. And I think that's why a lot of people have talked about perhaps one of the solutions to this problem is for us to fix our system of governance, our governance models. In other parts of the world, public officials use public facilities. They travel on the same trains, they ride on the same roads, they don't fly private jets. There are even countries who do not have private jets. Their leaders fly commercial flights. I think that maybe we need to seriously consider moving back in that direction, because as it stands today, these guys just, the reality is that they live in a different universe.
Yeah, I mean, before you can convince them to, you know, to use public infrastructure and facilities, it needs to exist.
It needs to be built.
Exactly. But I want to, you know, get your reaction to Bayo Ononuga saying that, you know, they inherited a dead economy. You know, I mean, when they were coming into office, it wasn't a dead economy. You know, they were going to build on, you know, the wins of the former administration. So how dead was Nigeria's economy when they got in? You know, and is that a good enough excuse to, as you know, a response to the New York Times article?
I think it's a very disingenuous and, with all due respect and apologies to whoever might be offended, very unintelligent response. You know, it's extremely unintelligent, because the data and the statistics says the exact opposite. The economy was not dead. The economy had problems, and those problems were fundamental. For example, there were fiscal imbalances as a result of, you know, for example, the Ways and Means issue, 23 trillion naira being printed and creating a money supply glut, and so many other issues. We were already struggling with inflation. You know, we're struggling with the multiplicity of exchange rates as was pursued by the Emefiele CBN. You know, those were serious problems that needed to be dealt with. But to say that the economy was dead is outrightly ridiculous. The economy was nowhere near dead. The economy was far better than it is right now. It was far better. The numbers say so. Inflation rate, when this administration came on board, was around 23%. It's 33.69 now. It's grown 11% in just 1 year. You know, that's a gallop. If it continues at that rate, we will hit 50% in another year. That's how terrible our situation is. How can they say the economy was dead? The exchange rate at that time, official exchange rate was 461 naira to the dollar. Parallel market rate was 700. Parallel market today is 1,005. That's more than 100% increase. How can he say that the economy was dead? And you know, the sad part of it is, this is the exact same thing that President Muhammadu Buhari did, you know, claiming that he inherited a dead economy from the Jonathan administration. And everything, all of the incompetence that we saw from Buhari was the fault of Jonathan. And we brought Buhari on, we as Nigeria, you know, whatever anybody might feel about the outcome of that election, Nigeria brought Buhari on board to solve those problems. He exacerbated them. He made them worse. And then the same person that brought Buhari to us and told us that this was the solution is now president and is now saying that that same Buhari gave him a dead economy. I mean, it's really, it flies in the face of logic and reason. You know, the things that these politicians cook up. I think that at some point somebody needs to tell these guys to shut up and get real. We can't continue to listen to loads of nonsense, with all due respect and apologies again, you know, from these guys, and just soak it up. I think that maybe when they send, especially when they sit in media conferences,
right,
I think, you know, people need to stand up to them and say, no, sir, what you're saying is not correct. You know, we can't continue this way.
What is the hope of Nigerians right now? I mean, you read the article, you saw the pleas for help. There are people who go to radio stations. There's a particular radio station in the north where people would go and drop their pleas for help, and the radio presenter will pick 3, and one willing Nigerian will, you know, help to pay the bill. So it's Nigerians paying for their health care, paying for everything, and being their own government. What is the hope of the average Nigerian?
I think that the average Nigerian has got to, at some point, acknowledge the fact that it's not going to work until he says it has to work. We are too docile. You know, I mean, look, even the New York Times article talked about the resilience of Nigerians and how it's now being stretched to breaking point. And I think we really are at that point. Yeah. When you get to a point where people can no longer buy gari, you know, gari is supposed to be poor man's food. I grew up knowing that as a student, when you are broke, flat dead broke, it's gari. Yeah. When you want to talk about how you suffered to build something, say, I drank gari to buy this car. Yeah. Now you can't drink gari anymore. It's no longer poor man's food. The poor man, you know, people are now talking about buying biscuits like, you know, you buy
People are
a
lucky
100
to have
naira
one
biscuit.
meal a day.
Yeah, you just buy a 100 naira pack of biscuits. The slices in the biscuit pack are now really tiny. The manufacturers have reduced their sizes ridiculously. So you buy that one pack, 100 naira, that has four slices of biscuits, and then you share with your children.
Yeah.
That's what people are doing now. And then, you know, the politicians are telling us that they inherited the dead economy. Who removed subsidy? Who
floated
the naira?
Yeah,
can you really say you were not aware of what you were
We need to go. But the thing is,
that.
you know, he in his, you know, statement to the New York Times, he of course was giving excuses as to why these things happened, about how, you know, Nigeria was spending so much money funding subsidy, and of course, you know, defending naira and all of that. But one thing that I found very, very, very embarrassing that he said was, the exchange rate is now below 1,500. He stated that it was almost hitting 1,900, and now it's currently about 1,005, and that, you know, if we continue to work, you know, it might get to about 1,200. These people are forgetting that they met this exchange at 218 naira. I mean, the time that they were calling for Goodluck Jonathan to be kicked out of power, the exchange rate was about 200 naira back then. He is then saying that they will work hard to bring that to 1,200 naira. It's embarrassing.
I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, you know, and I think that we need to continue to, you know, call them out and let them know that we're on to them. They can't gaslight us. We need things to work in this country.
Absolutely.
And they have to start doing that.
Segun Sopiton, thank you very much for joining us.